I've been at Lehigh since 1976. I was an undergraduate at Oberlin College in the 1960s and did my graduate work at Brandeis University, where I got my PhD in '76, and taught for a year at Oberlin and then came here, and I've been here ever since. I think I became an activist in the '60s when I was a student. I was also at Oberlin, which is a place which has a strong tradition of activism, and I sort of was a little bit late in terms of the Southern Civil Rights Movement. It sort of was shifting at the time I got to college, but that was also the year of the escalation of the Vietnam War, and so it was a kind of a learning experience for me finding out about the war, and eventually I went to a national protest in Washington at the Pentagon in '67, and that was a pretty profound experience in many ways, including being tear gassed and having a vanguard of guys with fixed bayonets marching right at us. But I think what that did is a lot of things happened there. One of them was being part of this huge assemblage of people that are feeling very strongly about the war as an immoral war was an empowering feeling, and I think one takes that on with one after you've done that. So that's been part of who I am and part of what I believe in, that as a citizen you need to act on what you believe and try and be informed about what you believe. But also I think even more locally I've gotten involved in issues as they've come to the forefront locally, and there was one land use issue that sort of some people and I in my neighborhood got together and we helped organize a neighborhood organization that worked for 3 years to sort of change or block a rezoning of a site to become commercial development, and 2 years worth, and we won, and then the next year a new developer came in and we lost. So there have been several others like that I would participate at city council or organize parents to keep a school open, those kinds of things. Back in 1986 I had a young woman come into me to talk to me about organizing a group called the Progressive Student Alliance. And she sort of single-handedly got this group organized to sort of raise awareness of bigger issues on this campus. And over the years, for 25 years, the Progressive Student Alliance existed, and I was the advisor, and they tackled a whole bunch of issues on campus, from investments in South Africa apartheid to environmental issues to some race and gender issues on campus, criticism of American intervention in Central America. So it was a somewhat varying over time. I mean, sometimes it would be more active, sometimes less, but it was a pretty active group. And then about 4 years ago, that disappeared. But one group I want to mention is the movement, which occurred in, I'm guessing about 2004 or 5, something like that, when there was I think it was a racist comment which was posted somewhere, and so there was a big speak out about that. The movement occurred because the students that were at the speak out said, anybody want to keep talking about this, let's go over to the snack bar and talk about it. And so they did, and out of that came a group of maybe 60 or 70 or 80 people, African American students or Latino students, women, and LGBTQ students, and they had meetings where they would sort of talk to each other and exchange ways in which they felt marginalized or oppressed or other things at Lehigh, and they ended up organizing a walkout of classes in which they asked faculty to excuse students at 11:45 who were sympathetic, and students to just walk out if they were sympathetic. And about 500 people ended up at the flagpole for a rally. A huge rally at Lehigh. It was sort of, gosh, this is Lehigh. And it was a sort of a speak out. There were a bunch of us spoke and said different things, and over time then they came up with a series of demands on the university, and they had another rally at which they presented their demands to the administration, and the then provost was there and received them, and afterwards they marched over to the president's house and they tacked the demands on the president's door. That was a very impressive group of people, and they did an awesome job, and it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that at Lehigh. Over years, I mean, they kept going, but over years, a combination of the new president, Alice Gast, coming in and eventually setting up a commission to start to look into some of these questions. Sort of sidetracked a lot of the energy, which is often what presidents do when they set up commissions. Now we have activism reoccurring because of yet another incident which had racial overtones to it, and the African American students or the students of color feeling there was some inequity in the treatment and some nastiness in the treatment of African American students. And so once again, boom, there's a big protest. And so as Brenda Martinez said, that Lehigh has these things occur, and then a spark goes off and people get all riled up, and then it gets, as she put it, I guess, swept under the rug, or nothing seems to happen as a result. And so that frustration, I think, is still very present, and it'll be interesting to see how things work out this time. I would not expect any significant difference in the way this is dealt with by the university unless and until there's a large cohort of students who are speaking out about it and showing their organization and are supported by faculty and staff in a visible and significant way. And that might make a difference. Mm-hmm. It's like any activism, from the 60s class. You never know if it's going to suddenly gel and start to bring about change, but just do it anyway. A part of me thinks Lehigh's always going to be Lehigh, and I know the administration and the board wants Lehigh to always be Lehigh, but part of what that means is undermining the kinds of things that I'm talking about, that undermining for lots of people the possibilities they'll be exposed to stuff that will, make lights go off in their brains and ideas percolate, and they'll seek out stuff that will be catapulting them into more varied and diverse kinds of ways of contributing to the world. The Lehigh brand is so entrepreneurial that Lehigh doesn't sort of advertise much else about itself than that, and that affects who comes here. And so it's that combination. And how do you change? How does Lehigh become different? And it's like moving a glacier. So let's move it slightly to the left here. It's really hard to do.